Hello everyone, my name is Aaron Woodman, and I want to welcome you to my YouTube channel. In this video, we will talk about expressing curiosity in conflicts and disagreements. This is important for not rushing to judgment and assuming something about a person that might not be true. Instead of trying to win the argument in a regular conversation you have with someone, we need to focus on being interested in why the person has certain thoughts. That is where curiosity comes in, where we use our active listening skills. Let's begin by looking at a study by Daniel Kahn, who is a professor of law at Yale University. He studies the way that our political opinions dumb us down. More specifically, he investigates how people unconsciously distort new information to make it fit with what they already believe on controversial topics from vaccination to climate change. A commonly heard complaint about political culture is that voters are not presented with enough facts. Kahn's work suggests that giving people facts won't necessarily help. In one of his studies, people were given a math problem to solve using data from a fictional clinical trial. The respondents had to make a series of calculations to work out whether a new skincare had been shown to increase or decrease a rash. Most respondents got the answer right. Next, they were invited to interpret exactly the same set of statistics, this time in the guise of a question about gun laws, a highly polarizing topic in the United States. Some respondents were given data suggesting that gun crime was on the rise after a change in the law, others that it was falling. This time, how accurately people answered the statistical question depended on their political persuasion. Faced with a result that they didn't like, pro-gun respondents suddenly got worse at math. The same went for anti-gun respondents. Kahn points out that this shouldn't be so surprising. If a person reads about a potentially dangerous skin cream or a change in how much tax they pay, it makes sense to absorb the new information rather than stick it to what they already believe. To do so otherwise would clearly be self-defeating, but most people get a little tangible benefit from being correct about, say, climate change. They do, however, get an immediate benefit from expressing beliefs that others like them share, the feeling of belonging. We care more about people than being right, and the risk of changing a shared belief is that you no longer have people with whom to share it. For example, you say you're discussing the night sky with a friend and they mention that Venus is Earth's nearest planetary neighbor. If you correct them by saying it is actually Mars, they will probably accept they were wrong. Maybe they will be mildly embarrassed, but the conversation will move on. Now imagine a similar conversation taking place in the 17th century. Your friend says something about the sun going around the earth, and you correct him, noting that according to the findings of this guy, Galileo, it's the other way around. Your friend is likely to get furious, to deny all the evidence you present, and to denounce you as committing heresy. That is because at the time, astronomy was not just about astronomy. It was bound up with people's deeply held beliefs about the social and spiritual order. By telling a friend that the earth goes around the sun, you were not just correcting an error in his conception of the physical universe, you were threatening their place in the social universe and thus his very sense of self. That is why, faced with information on a topic in which we have some personal investment, we perceive what supports our identity and ignore what does not. Kahn's name for this phenomenon is called identity protective cognition. You might assume it only applies to people of low intelligence or education, but Kahn has found that highly intelligent and educated people, if anything, are more likely to distort and mold facts to fit their worldview. Clever people are better at finding reasons to support their beliefs, even when those beliefs are false. They make more convincing arguments to others and to themselves, and they are better at reasoning away contradictory information. So, for those of you hoping for more productive political disagreements, it will be difficult to have those. More facts won't help, neither will better reasoning. When it comes to politics, people make their political opinions part of their identity. So if their political opinion is challenged or proven wrong, then they feel like their identity is being changed, and they will vigorously defend their opinion and identity. But what can you do? Kahn discovered an answer to that question by accident when he was approached by a group of documentary makers who wanted some guidelines on how to interests viewers in science-based topics. The group asked the professor to help them identify members of the public with high levels of scientific curiosity. Khan and his team of researchers invested in a survey tool called the Science Curiosity Scale, or SCS, which is a series of questions designed to predict how likely a person is to have their attention held by a science documentary. It includes questions about how likely the respondent is to read science books and invites them to choose between a few articles with different levels of scientific content. Khan's team surveyed thousands of people and found that individuals with high levels of scientific curiosity were equally distributed across the population. Men and women, lower class and upper class, right-leaning and left-leaning. They discover something else, too, something totally unexpected. Out of his own curiosity, Khan had inserted some questions on politically polarized issues into the survey. When the answers came back, he noticed that the higher a person's level of scientific curiosity, the less partisan bias they displayed. For Khan, that was counterintuitive. Previously, he had established that more knowledgeable people were also more likely to be partisan thinkers. But what the survey had done was distinguish people high in knowledge from those high in curiosity. The curious people didn't necessarily know a lot about science, but they took a lot of pleasure in finding stuff out. It turned out that Republicans and Democrats who were highly curious were much closer in their views on, say, climate change than Republicans and Democrats with significant levels of knowledge about it. Khan and his research colleagues designed another test. They gave participants a selection of articles about climate change and asked them to pick the one that they found most interesting. Some of the articles were supportive of climate change science and some undermined it. Some articles had headlines that framed the story as a surprise, others as confirmation of what was known. Normally, partisan respondents would pick the article that supported their worldview, but science-curious Republicans picked articles that went against their prevailing political viewpoint when the headline framed the story as a surprise. Quote, "Scientists report surprising evidence. Arctic ice melting even faster than expected," unquote. The same was true of science-curious Democrats in reverse. For the scientifically curious, Khan concluded the intrinsic pleasures of surprise and wonder trump their desire to have what they already know confirmed. So essentially, curiosity beats bias. That is a takeaway from Khan's research, because when you have an open mind, you do not let any predetermined judgments or bias take over your assumptions of something before learning more about it. To have an open mind, you need to have curiosity, have an intrinsic desire to learn new things, and not rush to judgment in disagreements. Powering up your desire to learn is often the only way to make the most out of a difficult encounter. For example, if you're a climate change activist who meets someone who believes the whole thing is a hoax, the best thing you can do is be intrigued by how they arrived at that view. What experiences have they had? What have they read or heard that got them there? Knowing that won't reconcile you to their view, but it gives you something to talk about. Remember, being curious does not automatically mean you have to accept someone's viewpoints for yourself, especially if you personally believe they are false. It is about allowing the person to explain their thoughts and for you to make a choice on if you want to keep engaging with them or not. You do not want to turn curiosity into a screaming match with someone and immediately telling them they are wrong. You can get into a disagreement too soon. It is usually wise to defer the point at which you say, well, actually, the longer you let the other person talk, unimpeded by interruption or the need to defend themselves, the more information you gather about their perspective. That inevitably puts you in a stronger position. Either you will learn something that modifies your view, or you will have gained a better understanding of the other person's view and of how to argue with them. And sometimes the more a person talks, the more they talk themselves out of the position they started in if the position turns out to be false or lacks context. Questions are a good way of showing curiosity, but they can also be a way of avoiding it. If I ask, quote, "Are you serious?" unquote, I am really saying that I don't take you seriously. Asking, quote, "Why do you believe that?" unquote, is better, but not by much. It sounds like a demand to the other person to justify themselves. It is much better to ask, quote, "Can you tell me more?" unquote, or questions like that. That kind of question shows that you are willing to listen and that you see this as a conversation of equals. It allows the person to freely give an answer to your question. Quote, "Can you tell me more about why you believe that?" unquote, is different to, quote, "Why do you believe that?" unquote, in a subtle but significant way. The key is to establish a connection with someone. If you don't connect with someone, it is difficult for you two to sincerely connect with each other. Also, it is easy to judge someone someone because it helps us be right, which is good for our ego and requires no energy. Curiosity is energy consuming because you are trying to figure things out about a person. So it feels hard to be curious, but that does not mean we shouldn't do it. But having curiosity is an essential way to create a connection with someone. If the person believes you are not interested in them, then they are unwilling to open up to you. So, as I said before, we need to suspend our judgments and listen to what the person has to say. Now, what should you do if the person you are talking to seems emotionally led, irrational, or possessed by bizarre beliefs? According to Jane Daughtry, a professor of conflict studies at the Center for Justice and Peace Building at Eastern Monet University, suggests that you assume that they are being rational and make it your job to figure out what kind of rationality they are using. To add some context, sociologist Max Weber argued that we use the term rational too narrowly. It usually describes people acting in a logical way designed to achieve a material goal. Weber called that instrumental rationality and proposed 3 other types of rational behavior. 1, there is affective rationality, when I make my relationship central to whatever I say and do. 2, there is traditional rationality, when we are happy to follow the advice that previous generations have given us. 3, there is values rationality, when everything we do is in the service of some higher value, almost regardless of outcome. Few people rely on just one mode of rationality. Most of us switch between them or use more than one at once. Still in a disagreement with someone who isn't using instrumental rationality, whether it is a family member, colleague, or anyone else, then rather than assuming they are crazy, you can try and get curious about what mode of rationality they have moved into. For example, if you have a child who is being irrationally stubborn about going to bed later, your child might be operating in effective rationality, where she is looking for a way to spend more time with you. Of course, every person is different, but you essentially want to think about what another person is actually trying to do and why they are behaving the way they do. You are not only trying to get curious yourself, but you are trying to stimulate the other person's curiosity. So how do you do that? Gregory Trevors, a psychologist from the University of South Carolina, has studied the backfire effect, which is the paradoxical tendency for people to strengthen a belief in false information after the falsity of that information is pointed out to them. The term was coined by political scientists who found that in 2009, people who believed that Iraq was behind 9/11 were more likely to believe that proposition after being shown information which refuted it. It is a similar reaction to the one that addicts have on being told their habit is bad for them. The risk of correcting someone, as we have seen, is that you trigger an identity threat that brings what Trevors calls moral emotions, like anger and anxiety, into play, which can quickly derail the conversation. Anger and anxiety lead people to focus narrowly on defending their position and attacking the source of any conflicting messages. An alternative strategy is to try and activate the other person's epistemic emotion, like surprise and curiosity, which, according to Trevors, act as an antidote to anxiety and anger. For example, Carly Leon, the former anti-vaccinator who spoke about how insults had made her dig her heels in, said, quote, "What helped me was people asking me questions that got me thinking," unquote. Earlier on, we discussed how to avoid triggering a threat reaction by conveying your regard for the other person before getting into the disagreement in terms. Being curious about what they have to say is one way to do that. Other than affirmation, you can also frame new information or new arguments in a way that intrigues them rather than making them defensive. Displaying your own curiosity about a topic in a conversation indicates that you don't think you have all the answers and encourages the other person to feel curious too. Gregory Trevors suggested using stories, humor, and metaphors to neutralize the other person's defense system and feel comfortable opening up to you. In short, rather than trying to sound convincing, you should actually be interested in the other person. It is always easier to be incurious than curious. Curiosity is hard because it requires the allocation of our scarce resources, energy, time, and attention. If you have a different opinion than someone else on an issue, that might be because both of you have different experiences of it. It does not mean both of you are inherently wrong to feel that way, but contemplating those differences demands an expenditure of brain power on your part to which you are often unwilling to commit. It is simply quicker and more efficient to dismiss someone else as wrong or mean than it is to be interested in what they are saying. In a world where we are bombarded with opinions and drama, that can seem like a necessary reaction, but it is one we should resist. By shutting down our curiosity about different views, we make ourselves less intelligent, less humane, and less interesting. We have to be more open-minded. In conclusion, you want to focus on understanding the other person in conflicts and disagreements. The research we looked at in this video shows that when our beliefs are tied to our identity, facts alone rarely change our minds. In fact, the smarter and more informed we are, the better we often become at defending what we already believe. That is why arguments so easily turn into battles instead of conversations. Curiosity is an important way, or is an important key to this problem. When we choose curiosity over judgment, we stop treating disagreements as threats and start treating them as opportunities to learn more or learn about another person's experiences, values, and reasoning. Curiosity helps lower defensiveness, reduces emotional reactions like anger and anxiety, and opens the door to real dialogue. It shifts us from trying to prove a point to trying to make a connection. Being curious does not mean you have to agree with someone's opinion. It does not mean abandoning your values or accepting false information. It means listening long enough to understand, or truly understand, where someone is coming from before deciding how or whether to respond. It means asking open, respectful questions, being willing to be surprised if you learn something new, and allowing room for complexity instead of rushing to judgment. Curiosity takes takes effort. It requires patience, energy, and humility. But the reward is deeper understanding, stronger relationships, and more meaningful conversations with people. In a world full of division and quick reactions, choosing curiosity is a powerful act. Because when curiosity grows, connection grows. In the next video, we will talk about apologizing for a mistake. Until then, please like this video, subscribe to my YouTube channel, and turn on the post notifications so you will be notified when I post my next video. I appreciate your support. Remember, you are powerful, you are capable, and you are the changemaker our society needs. Thank you so much for watching this video. I will see you soon.